In the small town of Dalewood in Ohio, where life was calm and measured, there were no high-profile crimes. Local residents knew each other, and it was difficult for them to imagine that something terrible could happen in their quiet corner of the earth. However, in early October 2017, the atmosphere in the town changed dramatically after the disappearance of 18-year-old Emily Reilly. This story, full of mystery, fear, and despair, touched the hearts of the entire community and led to an investigation that shocked everyone. Emily was the youngest of three daughters in the Reilly family. From an early age, she showed a love for music and art. She was an active tubing player, played sports throughout her life, and took part in various school activities. Emily always had an optimistic outlook on life and many plans for the future. She dreamed of going to university and becoming an interior designer. In her high school, Emily was popular among her peers. She was loved for her kindness, sensitivity, and willingness to help. She and her friends often spent time outside of school, cheering for the local football team and enjoying evening walks in the park. On October 9, 2017, Emily met with friends at a local cafe to celebrate the end of her first semester. That evening, they laughed, discussed plans for the summer, and dreamed about the future. Emily decided to go home by 10 in the evening so as not to disturb her parents. As she left the cafe, she noticed a familiar red pickup truck driving down the street. Emily waved at the driver and continued on her way, unaware that this could be the last time anyone would see her. The next morning, Emily's parents, John and Laura, began to worry when their daughter did not show up for breakfast. This behavior was completely atypical for her. While they tried to call her, Laura searched the entire apartment, hoping that Emily was simply staying with friends. When by midday his daughter had not shown up, John decided to call the police and report her missing. Local authorities soon began investigating and a search was launched in Dalewood. The first team of police immediately began interviewing Emily's friends and checking CCTV footage from the cafe and surrounding areas. They found that Emily had left the cafe at 10 p.m. and was following her usual routes. However, further information was vague, and investigators were unable to share specific leads with the family as to where Emily had disappeared. Soon, rumors began to circulate around the town about strange occurrences surrounding Emily's disappearance. Some locals began to talk about encounters with strange men that evening. Tension in the community increased, and residents began to gather together, offering to help in the search. The morning after Emily's disappearance, police received information from an anonymous witness. He claimed to have noticed a red pickup truck near the cafe that evening. This alleged coincidence gave the police another clue, and they began searching for the owner of the vehicle. The owner of the car turned out to be a local man named Todd Martin, who had a history of minor drug offenses. He briefly studied Emily and her friends in a social atmosphere without much concern. The officers began to check his alibi, but Todd refused to answer questions, which only increased their suspicions. The police announced a search for Emily and asked for help from the public. Search operations began. Dozens of volunteers turned to the police to comb the forests, fields, and even rivers in the area. Leaflets with Emily's photo were distributed on every corner of the city, but the days passed and not a single clue was found. The community was afraid, genuinely worried about Emily's fate, and continued to hold events to attract media attention to her disappearance. 2 weeks passed, and after a while, locals began to lose hope. But on October 25th, the police received a call from an anonymous source who claimed to provide information on Emily's location. It was an emotional event, and police rushed to meet the informant. When they met, the informant claimed to have seen Emily in Todd's custody. He said he overheard them talking and noticed that Emily was clearly in fear. The police immediately prepared to make a move to arrest Todd. From October 26 onwards, the events became increasingly tense. The police arrested Todd Martin and interrogated him. During the interrogation, Todd appeared nervous. However, he denied all charges, claiming that he did not know where Emily was. With no direct evidence against him, the police knew that it was difficult to keep Todd in custody. However, they continued to investigate with additional important leads, interrupted by new resources. Meanwhile, air and water searches continued. The police found some traces indicating the possible location of the girl. Returning to Todd's house, they began to explore his territory, exploring every possible corner. But as in the past weeks, the finds remained meager. In addition to the tales of this story, New news came in on some updates from the emergency services. The message cast doubt on the possibility that someone else could have played a role in the disappearance, and the exact details of their location were constantly being checked. In parallel with this work, anonymous tips began to come in pointing to Emily's whereabouts, for which cash rewards were promised. People were becoming increasingly interested, and each new turn of events created additional interest. Amidst this enormous pressure, Todd finally began to reveal some details of his actions. He admitted that he knew where Emily was, but his fear of retaliation kept him silent. The police continued to question, and a picture was emerging in front of them. If they did not get more evidence, the case could be put on hold. After that, the world began to fall again. As new facts emerged, the department escalated its relations with local residents, providing additional assessments and collecting all the data it could. The fear was felt not only by Todd, but also by other locals whose connection to him had cemented complex dependencies. After a month of further confrontations, fortunately, on November 22nd, after a somewhat complicated investigation, local police, having received information about Emily's whereabouts, decided to take action. An informant who had come forward again described the place where she might be held. The rescue operation was well planned, and Sir Emily was posted at all the necessary addresses. The operation was a success, and the police found Emily, tied up and scared, but alive. She was taken to hospital for a health check and to receive the necessary medical care. Now that Emily had been found, the police focused all their efforts on identifying all the details of the disappearance. Todd was arrested, and he had lawyers who explained that he could not have known that Emily had been taken away for the duration of the investigation. Todd turned out to be the one who had organized her abduction, rigging the facts and controlling Emily. His motives remained dark until the end, and he was clearly a man who wandered near his own boundaries. Investigators focused on the fact that he showed signs of mental illness, but this did not distort his responsibility. In early 2018, the trial of Todd Martin began. Emily gave evidence, and the connections between them were finally established. Despite the fear and trauma, she was strong, and her testimony became a powerful part of the case. After weeks of hearings and testimony, the mandatory connection with the rest of the substances, including psychological studies that revealed his behavior, opened an investigation. In March, the court sentenced Todd to a long term in prison, determining that he had no chance of parole. Todd's trial and execution sent shockwaves through Dalewood. Communities began to strengthen and develop, creating support programs for victims of violence, including women and children. It was a turning point for the small town, where every woman was protected and could count on support. Emily slowly but surely returned to normal life. She decided to use her experience and become an activist for women's rights and support for survivors of violence. Emily and her family organized events every year to remember those suffering from violence and for victims who did not have time to get help. These events brought people together and inspired them to share their stories. She also raised important issues at student council meetings and was active with local outreach centers. The story of Emily's disappearance became a symbol of the importance of supporting each other and sharing experiences to prevent violence. Her name remained in the hearts of many people, and the movement for women's rights and safe living conditions continued to grow thanks to her efforts. The story of Emily Reilly's disappearance cannot be forgotten. It was a watershed for the entire town, which organized to fight violence and crime. The memory of her resilience and courage inspired many people. Emily's shared struggle became a symbol of hope and change, showing everyone that even in the most difficult times, you can find a way out and change the world for the better. Everyone who knew Emily's case continued to spread her message. The world can be a better place if we take care of each other and support those in need.